Hello, I'm Joseph Krings, ACE, and today we're going to be taking a look at the editing of Captain Fantastic. My name is Joseph Krings, and I'm a motion picture editor, mostly of films, also a little bit of television, mix of narrative and documentary, both. I grew up without any cable television. You know, we had like the two networks we could get in over the antenna. So I didn't really know much about movies, but right before I left for college, my parents got a satellite dish. And I finally saw a couple movies that sort of changed my whole perspective of that, you know. I saw Husbands by Cassavetes and Johnny Suede by Tom DiCillo on IFC. All of a sudden my mind was kind of blown. I was like, whoa, movies can be art, you know, this is fun, this is great. Put that in my pocket, go to college to be a journalist. They don't have a film school at the college, but they do have film classes. And I said, let's do that, that'll be interesting. It's film theory, and then they just screen all the classics, the 60s European cinema, you know, New American cinema, all that stuff I learned about for the first time as soon as I get to college, and I think, oh my God, this is what I want to do. The specific key point for editing was I, like most people in college, thought I'm going to direct. But I made a documentary. The college had just gotten their first Avid system in 1998. So I was graduating, and I asked them if I could come back in and work on that new system. And that's when I first touched a computer editing interface. The first time I tried to edit something creative I made, and I just realized that was it. It was like a flash. It was like, oh, here's where it all happens. Like, this is where I can figure it all out, you know? It's just me and the footage. This is magic. Like, this is where it really happens. My approach to editing has sort of been always constantly changing as I go along. Taking in the material for the very first time is something I've had to just learn on the fly. I started in commercials, and I never really assisted on film, so I didn't really learn from a lot of great film editors how they do it. I didn't have time with them to observe their process, and so I sort of had to make it up on the fly. I mean, dailies is the most sensitive part of the process. It's the only time you're going to see the footage fresh. It's really important when you're watching dailies to try to block out all the other external noise, all the stress that's coming from production, anything like that, and just try to watch the footage as open and as clear of mind as possible so that you can react to it in a very natural way. I always try to be really open to, like, oh, that made my heart skip a little bit, or that made me lean in. Whatever it is, if that does that to you the first time you see it, it's likely going to do that to at least a percentage of people when they see it for the first time. So if you're able to incorporate it into the film, so that's what I'm looking for. Those are the moments that I'm trying to be awake to. Also, Captain Fantastic is the story of a family living completely off the grid in the Pacific Northwest. When we join the movie, it's just the father. And we learn that that's because the mother has to be in a hospital at the moment to deal with psychiatric issues. We learn when they take a trip into town that the mother has committed suicide. That becomes an issue of, will they or won't they go back into society and go to the funeral of their mother. You know, it's a road movie, it's a comedy, but deals with some really dramatic issues. For Matt, the director, it's a very personal story. He had children, and you know, once you have children, you're dealing with this idea of like, how in this modern society can I raise them to have the right values and the right beliefs? He had also grown up in some alternative communities, nothing as extreme as this, but he thought, okay, what if I, had decided to raise my kids completely off the grid? And that was the seed of the idea. What I wanted to talk about with Captain Fantastic is a specific scene that gives a good example of how the edit changes, how the story changes, how the flexibility you can have to rework the order of events, the actual staging of events, just by using a few tricks. sometimes it makes a profound difference. It also is an example of just doing like simple visual effects to change the nature of the way the scene works. In the scene that we're talking about, they've just had some very rigorous training, and he's going to explain to them why they can't go to the funeral.
We can't go to Mommy's funeral. We have to do what we're told. Some fights, you can't win. The powerful control the lives of the powerless. That's the way the world works. It's unjust and it's unfair. But that's just too damn bad. We have to shut up and accept it. Well, fuck that. So they know we're coming!
In the course of that scene, we've gone from Ben, the father, saying, we're not going, to him himself turning the corner and saying, well, fuck that, and then going into sheer joy. On top of that, we're going from a world which we've established for almost half an hour of being out in the woods, completely separated from society, into these 6 children seeing society for the first time. Of course, Ben would have to speak to that, right? You would think he's always been a teacher. He's got to tell them what it is that they're now encountering. That's not the way it was in the script. And the script read great, by the way. It doesn't become apparent that it doesn't really work until you put the things together sometimes. You know, in the script, it's the speech, and then it just says, the bus is driving down a country highway. And then the daughter says, stop. And so they halt the bus, stop, and have a dialogue scene. The little girl, Zaja, gets out and finds some roadkill. It really just put the brakes on the entire momentum. So this great turnaround in this feel was immediately stopped. Then, as you further went down the script, there was none of this speech. There was just they just drive up on the highway, and then there's another dialogue scene. What I wanted from it wasn't there, which is I wanted to see them really just go into society, and I wanted the dad to speak to that. And then, just in terms of the up and downs of momentum, it was like a takeoff, then a stop, and then having to take off again and gently move into more dialogue. What we ended up with was basically the idea of I thought what would be ideal, but I didn't know how to make that happen. Well, it turned out that later down the road, there was another scene. If you look at the script for this one, it shows that we're having a dialogue scene, which was ultimately cut between Ben and Bo. And then the script has them drive into the outskirts of Sacramento, California. Ben gives a speech, as he's prone to do.
We have the embodiment of Calvin Coolidge's statement that the business of America is business. Instead of investing adequately in infrastructure, education, and healthcare for all, we continue to pray at the altars of oil-rich...
In this case, the idea was they're supposed to be just sort of in stop and go traffic, but the way they shot it, they didn't really have a way. They can't, close off a freeway, and on this budget. So what we had was the bus, static, but with no other cars around it. You couldn't see any other cars, and it dead stop. It just didn't feel real, and that happens. So this scene was on the chopping block. I saw a chance here. I thought, okay, what we can do is we can take that speech and we can repurpose it, because that's what I want earlier. I want this speech. I've always got the movie up on the wall, the scene cards, all the pictures from each scene, and I thought, okay, you just take this and you can put it here, and then you remove this, and it's going to be smooth. The other trick of it is that this footage is all static. So the shots of Ben grabbing the microphone and giving his speech and talking, the kids looking out the windows, all in a dead still bus. It seemed pretty clear to me this is a very basic VFX. They might have shot it this way even if they wanted to have a moving bus. So I was able to take that second unit imagery of driving and just comp it into the windows, reverse it so it's a mirror, take the transparency down. And I could do that, just a really junky version of that in the offline edit in the Avid. Cut that with this other second unit stuff and stuff going by, and just like that, voila, it looks like they're moving. Everything that I wanted now was present. He hits the music, they go right in, and then the kids are seeing the world for the first time, and he gives them their speech about capitalism.
Attention all campers, this is your captain speaking. Here we have the embodiment of Calvin Coolidge's statement that the business of America is business.
Instead of two places that were about stopping, it became one place about momentum and transition from the first world of our movie to the second world of our movie. And I mean, I think anyway, it works really smooth, you know, and really slick. I don't know that to this day I can look at a movie and say that was a really well edited movie. If I'm enjoying it, I'm certainly lost in the movie. I'm living in that world and I'm not thinking about or tracking this edit to that edit. I just get a sense of the overall, was it effective? As a viewer, you don't know what scene got moved from here to there. You don't know which scene had technical troubles and they decided to do it in only 2 shots. You know, they may have done that because everything else was bad or they lost it. You know, it wasn't like a creative decision. There's so much that goes on between just the footage and the edit from shot to shot and the sound design work. It's all of the other stuff. It's taking the director's vision and interpreting it. You have to interpret the footage and their intention and see where the two meet.